In 1967, when Harlem was a battleground of power struggles and old-school gang wars, Victor "the Shark" Lanza, a mob boss with deep pockets and a sharper sense of betrayal, made a decision that would seal his fate. He thought his money and influence could buy anything: people, loyalty, even Bumpy Johnson's family. Little did he know, he had just crossed a line no one, not even a kingpin, could survive. He thought his empire was untouchable. But in a world where respect is everything, he had no idea he was about to face the legend of Harlem himself, Bumpy Johnson. And in 72 hours, Lanza would find out what happens when you take something that belongs to Bumpy Johnson. Victor the Shark. Lanza was a name whispered in fear and whispered with reverence in New York's underworld. His wealth and power extended beyond the streets of Harlem, touching every part of the city's criminal empire. He controlled a network of illegal gambling, narcotics, and shady deals with politicians who dared not challenge his reach. But Lanza wasn't just a businessman. He was a shark, circling his prey until they had no choice but to submit or die. He had learned that true power came from fear, and fear he commanded. His ties to influential city officials made him nearly invincible, but beneath the veneer of invulnerability was a dangerous arrogance, an arrogance that made him believe he could cross even the most feared men in Harlem. Bumpy Johnson, on the other hand, was a man of honor in a world where honor was a currency as valuable as gold. Harlem was his kingdom, and the people in it were his responsibility. He had built his empire from the ground up, leading with wisdom, strength, and an unwavering sense of justice. Unlike the mob bosses who used their power to crush their enemies, Bumpy used his influence to protect the innocent and to strike at those who threatened the peace of his community. He was a living legend in Harlem, feared by some, respected by all. And while his enemies might have feared his name, his allies knew him as a protector, a man who would go to any lengths for family. When Lanza kidnapped Bumpy's daughter, Maria, in a ruthless attempt to draw Bumpy into his criminal dealings, he unknowingly set the stage for his own downfall. Maria wasn't just Bumpy's flesh and blood. She was a symbol of everything Bumpy fought for. His family, his community, and his code of honor were his life. To take his daughter was to declare war on the very foundation of his existence. Lanza's threat wasn't just about the money or the power, it was personal. By kidnapping Maria, he crossed a line that even he couldn't come back from. He thought he could control Bumpy by attacking what he loved most. But Bumpy's response would be swift and unforgiving. Harlem wasn't a place where family was taken lightly, and when you mess with the ones Bumpy loved, you're playing with fire. What Lanza didn't know was that every step he took to tighten his grip on Bumpy's daughter would be met with a strike he'd never see coming. The line had been drawn, and in the coming days, the streets of Harlem would become a battleground between the two men. One would fall, and the other would emerge as a legend. The clock was ticking. 72 hours wasn't just a countdown, it was a promise, and in Bumpy Johnson's world, promises of justice were never broken. It all began when Bumpy received the call, just hours after Lanza's men snatched Maria off the streets as she was heading home from school. He was in the middle of a meeting, discussing the future of his numbers game, when the news hit like a thunderbolt. His heart didn't race. He didn't panic. Instead, he exhaled slowly, as if he had been expecting this moment his entire life. It was a test, and Bumpy Johnson never failed his tests. Lanza, thinking he could leverage his control over the streets to force Bumpy into submission, made his move. He saw Maria's innocence as the perfect pawn in his game. After all, Bumpy had never hesitated to show his protective side. He'd made it clear that his family came first. And so, Lanza believed that the kidnapping would break Bumpy's will. He expected the feared Harlem legend to beg, to bow to the power of money, to fall in line. But what Lanza didn't know was that Bumpy was a man of foresight. He had already considered the risks of leadership, the price of power. Bumpy knew what would happen if someone attacked what he loved, and he'd been preparing for this day since the moment he became a protector of Harlem. As Lanza sat back, smugly waiting for the ransom demand to be met, Bumpy's mind was working. He wasn't merely going to pay the price for his daughter's release. He was going to show Lanza exactly what happens when you mess with family. Bumpy's first move was calm. He reached out to his network, tapping into his contacts, quietly setting up meetings with his most trusted allies. His reputation preceded him, and no one doubted that he would do whatever it took to bring his daughter home. But for Bumpy, this was more than just a rescue mission. It was a chance to deliver justice to a man who thought he could play God with the lives of others. Bumpy didn't let his anger show. There was no rush, no need to let the mob boss know what was coming. Instead, he exuded an aura of calm certainty, almost philosophical. He sat at his desk, staring out at the Harlem skyline, reflecting on the lessons of his past. "In this life, you have two choices," Bumpy said to himself, barely above a whisper. "You can fight for what's yours, or you can lose everything. No one ever wins by playing it safe." He made the call to Maria's school, to the safe houses, to the underground contacts. One by one, he ensured the world around him was aligned for the inevitable. But it wasn't just about brute force. It was about using the streets against the man who thought he controlled them. As the hours passed, Lanza's men felt invincible. They had the upper hand, the police were bought off, and they were closing in on the ransom money. The air was thick with a false sense of security. But the truth was, Lanza was playing a dangerous game. His arrogance blinded him to the fact that he was in Bumpy Johnson's territory now, and the territory had its own rules. Bumpy knew the game well. While Lanza celebrated what he thought was a victory, Bumpy moved like a shadow through Harlem, putting pieces in place for a showdown that would end with Lanza's downfall. At midnight on the third day, when Lanza's men were preparing to take the ransom and make the exchange, they had no idea that Bumpy was already inside their operation, watching, waiting. The mob boss was on his way to meet his goons when he saw a figure step out from the darkness. Bumpy Johnson. Lanza's face went pale as he realized who was standing in front of him. "Wait, you're Bumpy Johnson," he stammered, the blood draining from his face. Bumpy stood tall, his eyes cold with purpose. "You made a mistake," he said quietly, "and now you're going to pay for it." It took exactly 3 minutes for Lanza to understand that Bumpy's revenge wasn't just a simple kill. It was a statement. Within moments, Lanza was left lying in the street, his life slipping away with the finality of a man who had miscalculated the depths of his enemies. Bumpy's action was swift, direct, and final. No blood was spilled in vain. Justice was delivered in its purest form, calculated, with no need for excess. Lanza's reign ended not with a bang, but with a quiet acknowledgement of his own hubris. The message was clear. Family was sacred, and no man was above the law, no matter how much money he had. In the days that followed, the streets of Harlem hummed with the news of Lanza's demise. Word spread quickly, but what lingered longer was the lesson Bumpy had delivered. The community respected Bumpy even more, and they understood that in Harlem there was a price for crossing the wrong people. Lanza's death wasn't just the end of a mob boss, it was a reminder that in Bumpy's world, respect trumped everything. And that's why, after all these years, they still talk about Bumpy Johnson in Harlem. What would you have done if someone took your family? Would you have let it slide, or would you have brought justice the way Bumpy did? Smash that like button if you think Bumpy did the right thing, and drop a comment if you think someone else might have handled it differently. And don't forget to subscribe for more legendary stories.